This episode is short but good. Trust me, folks.
The man is Heinrich Kramer, and he is writing the most blood-soaked book of the 15th century, the Malleus Maleficarum, the Witch's Hammer, a book that would torment the world for a century after its release, and be responsible for the torture and death of 70,000 innocent people.
Treating of three necessary concomitants of witchcraft, which are the devil, a witch, and the permission of Almighty God.
He goes on to say that female empowerment would bring on the apocalypse. He even made the title of the book Female, to hammer home his point. Malleus Maleficarum is a hammer used only on women.
So, we must find the mark. We must find the mark.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude, located not far from the Redneck Mecca. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts has curled up on the floor asleep. I saw Lord Squeakington recently. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cats. Get over it. And as you can probably tell, I sound really funny. I have a sinus infection. Yeah, because just having COVID wasn't enough for me. I now have a sinus infection. I'm just going to give you a brief update on things and then drop you right into Skullbeard and I reading more from Hexenhammer. And there's some good shit there. It really is. That's where the show title comes from, is this episode. Anyway, folks, things are going. They're complicated for a variety of reasons, which I cannot get into because it's a little hard for me to breathe at this moment. And for complicated reasons, I can't go into the details as to why it will be hard for me to see a doctor before next week. But your support on Patreon will be much appreciated in the coming days. I cannot explain things, but I'm sure you can hear that I sound funny. It comes and it goes, and I got really good allergy medicine, and it hasn't cleared up, so that tells me it's a sinus infection. And for very complicated reasons, it's going to be hard for me to see a doctor before sometime next week at the earliest. It will probably be later than that for reasons I just can't get into because I have got to edit this episode and get it out. So my apologies. But I can tell you right now, there is some really, really good shit in this episode. It's not just hugely fall out of your chair laughing funny, but it's pretty close, and if it keeps building this way, we'll be in good shape. I had to call the recording Skullbeard and I did off sooner because my sinuses started acting up. I thought it was a side effect of corona, and then I thought it was my allergies, and I am now absolutely convinced that it is a sinus infection I have. Sorry, folks. But you're getting some good stuff now, and I will try to get you a news episode out here in the very near future. There's a whole lot of stuff I want to talk about that I can't do right now because, as you can understand, breathing is kind of hard. So, yeah. Anyway, enjoy Skullbeard and I reading more from Hex and Hammer. Okay.
And I will read that whole bloody paragraph over again because reasons.
But at least it's got fornication in it.
It does. It can be seen from this how craftily that old enemy labors in the seduction of souls. For it was in this way that the bathwoman, whom we have mentioned, and who was burned, confessed that she had been seduced by some old woman. A different method, however, was used in the case of her companion, who had met the devil in human form on the road while she herself was going to visit her lover for the purpose of fornication. And when the incubus devil had seen her and had asked her whether she recognized him, and she had said that she did not, he had answered, "I am the devil, and if you wish, I will always be ready at your pleasure, and will not fail you in any necessity." And when she had consented, she continued for 18 years, up to the end of her life, to practice diabolical filthiness with him, together with a total abnegation of the faith as a necessary condition.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, curiously enough, I did pick up my pedal board from the storage place, so I actually have a wah around here somewhere.
There is also a third method of temptation through the way of sadness and poverty. Oh!
Funny how that works.
Yeah. For when girls have been corrupted and have been scorned by their lovers after they have immodestly copulated with them in the hope and promise of marriage with them, and have found themselves disappointed in all their hopes and everywhere despised, they turn to the help and protection of devils. Because nobody else will do it in your misogynistic society.
Right.
Either for the sake of vengeance by bewitching those lovers or the wives they have married, or for the sake of giving themselves up to every sort of lechery.
I'm down.
Alas, experience tells us that there is no number to such girls, and consequently the witches that spring from this class are innumerable. Let us give out a few of many examples. Ooh. This could be really juicy.
We should be so lucky.
There is a place in the Diocese of Brixton where a young man deposed the following facts concerning the bewitchment of his wife.
Sorry, I was distracted with changing something. Another setting. In the time of my youth, I loved a girl who importuned me to marry her, but I refused her and married another girl from another country. But wishing for friendship's sake to please her, I invited her to the wedding. She came, and while the other honest women were wishing us luck and offering gifts, she raised her hand, and in the hearing of the other women who were standing round, said, "You will have few days of health after today." My bride was frightened, since she did not know her. For, as I have said, I have married her from another country, and asked the bystanders who she was who had threatened her in that way, and they said that she was a loose and vagrom woman. Nonetheless, it happened just as she had said, for after a few days my wife was so bewitched that she lost the use of all her limbs, and even now, after 10 years, the effects of witchcraft can be seen on her body. If we were to collect all the similar instances which have occurred in one town of that diocese, it would take a whole book, but they are written and preserved at the house of the Bishop of Brixton, who still lives to testify to their truth, astounding and unheard of though they are.
So, He's a pornographer.
Apparently so.
But we must not pass over in silence one unheard of and astonishing instance. A certain high-born count, in the ward of Westerich, in the diocese of Strasbourg, married a noble girl of equal birth. But after he had celebrated the wedding, he was for 3 years unable to know her carnally, on account, as the event proved, of a certain charm which prevented him. In great anxiety, and not knowing what to do, he called loudly on the saints of God. It happened that he went to the state of Metz to negotiate some business, and while he was talking about the streets and squares of the city, attended by his servants and domiciles, he met a certain woman who had formerly been his mistress. Seeing her, and not at all thinking of the spell that was on him, he spontaneously addressed her kindly for the sake of their old friendship, asking her how she did and whether she was well. And she, seeing the Count's gentleness, in turn asked very particularly after his health and affairs. And when he answered that he was well and that everything prospered with him, she was astonished and was silent for a time. The Count, seeing her thus astonished, again spoke kindly to her, inviting her to converse with him. So she inquired after his wife and received a similar reply, that she was in all respects well. Then she asked if he had any children, and the Count said he had 3 sons, one born in each year. At that she was more astonished and was again silent for a while. And the Count asked her, "Why, my dear, do you make such careful inquiries? I am sure that you congratulate me on my happiness." Then she answered, "Certainly I congratulate you, but curse that old woman who said she would bewitch your body so that you could not have any connection with your wife. And in proof of this, there is a pot in the well in the middle of our yard containing certain objects evilly bewitched. And this was placed there in order that, as long as its contents were preserved intact, for so long you would be unable to cohabit. But see, it is all in vain, and I am glad, etc." On his return home, the Count did not delay to have the well drained, and finding the pot, burned its contents and all, whereupon he immediately recovered the virility which he had lost. Wherefore the Countess again invited all the nobility to a fresh wedding celebration, saying that she was now the lady of that castle and estate, after having for so long remained a virgin. For the sake of the Count's reputation, it is not expedient to name that castle and estate, but we have related the story in order that the truth of the matter may be known, to bring so great a crime into open detestation.
Uh-huh.
Many people are saying...
Oh, yes, it's very credible. Yeah, cock-blocking curses.
Yeah. Show title.
The cock-blocking curse? Okay. The Count and the cock-blocking curse. From this, it is clear that witches use various methods to increase their numbers. For the above-mentioned woman, because she had been supplanted by the Count's wife, case that spell upon the Count with the help of another witch, and this is how one witchcraft brings innumerable others in its train. And on to part 2, question 1, chapter 2.
Oh, boy.
Eventually.
Of the way whereby a formal pact with evil is made. Oh, this could be juicy.
We should be so lucky.
The method by which they profess their sacrilege through an open pact of fidelity to devils varies according to the several practices to which different witches are addicted. And to understand this, it first must be noted that there are, as was shown in the first part of this treatise, 3 kinds of witches, namely those who injure but cannot cure, those who cure but through some strange pact with the devil cannot injure, and those who can both injure and cure. And among those who injure, One class in particular stands out, which can perform every sort of witchcraft and spell, comprehending that all the others individually can do. Wherefore, if we describe the method of profession in their case, it will suffice also for all the other kinds. And this class is made up of those who, against every instinct of human or animal nature, are in the habit of eating and devouring the children of their own species.
Aha! I'm sure. And this is the most powerful class of witches, who practice innumerable other harms also, for they raise hailstorms and hurtful tempests and lightnings, cause sterility in men and animals, offer to devils, or otherwise kill the children whom they do not devour. But these are only the children who have not been reborn by baptism at the font, for they cannot devour those who have been baptized, nor any without God's permission. Again, God's motherfucking permission. They can also, before the eyes of their parents and when no one is in sight, throw into the water children walking by the waterside. They make horses go mad under their riders. They can transport themselves from place to place through the air, either in body or in imagination. They can affect judges and magistrates so that they cannot hurt them. They can cause themselves and others to keep silence under torture. They can bring about a great trembling in the hands and horror in the minds of those who would arrest them. They can show to others occult things and certain future events by the information of devils, though this may sometimes have a natural cause. See the question, whether devils can foretell the future, in the second book of Sentences. They can see absent things as if they were present. They can turn the minds of men to inordinate love or hatred. They can at times strike whom they will with lightning, and even kill some men and animals. They can make of no effect the generative desires, and even the powers of copulation causing abortion, kill infants in the mother's womb by a mere exterior touch. They can, at time, bewitch men and animals with a mere look without touching them and cause death. They dedicate their own children to devils, and in short, as has been said, they can cause all the plagues which other witches can only cause in part. That is, when the justice of God permits such things to be. All these things this most powerful of all classes of witches can do, but they cannot undo them. So, yes, binaries occur on a spectrum. Very cool.
But it is common to all of them to practice carnal copulation with devils. Therefore, if we show the method used by this chief class in their profession of their sacrilege, anyone may easily understand the method of the other classes. We's getting the hookups, man! All right, bring it on. There were such witches lately, 30 years ago. Yeah, that sounds recent, man.
Yep. Real.
In the district of Savoy, towards the state of Bern, as Nieder tells us in his Formicarius, and there are now some in the country of Lombardy, in the domains of the Duke of Austria, where the Inquisitor of Como, as we told in the former part, caused 41 witches to be burned in 1 year. And he was 55 years old and still continues to labor in the Inquisition. What a show, Inquisition.
Now, the method of profession is twofold. One is a solemn ceremony, like a solemn vow. The other is private and can be made to the devil at any hour alone. The first method is when witches meet together in the conclave on a set day, and the devil appears to them in the assumed body of a man and urges them to keep faith with him, promising them worldly prosperity and length of life, and they recommend a novice to his acceptance. And the devil asks whether she will abjure the faith and forsake the holy Christian religion and the worship of the anomalous woman, for so they call the most blessed Virgin Mary, and never venerate the sacraments. And if he finds the novice or disciple willing, then the devil stretches out his hand, and so does the novice, and she swears with upraised hand to keep that covenant. And when this is done, the devil at once adds that this is not enough, and when the disciple asks what more must be done, the devil demands the following oath of homage to himself, that she give herself to him, body and soul, forever, and do her utmost to bring others of both sexes into his power. He adds, finally, that she is to make certain unguents from the bones and limbs of children, especially those who have been baptized, by all which means she will be able to fulfill all her wishes with his help. Okay.
All right. We Inquisitors had credible experience of this method in the town of Brissac in the Diocese of Basel, receiving full information from a young girl witch who had been converted, whose aunt also had been burned in the Diocese of Strasbourg. And she added that she had become a witch by the method in which her aunt had first tried to seduce her.
Yep. I think I've seen that one too. For one day, her aunt ordered her to go upstairs with her, and at her command to go into a room where she found 15 young men clothed in green garments, after the manner of German knights. And her aunt said to her, "Choose whom you wish from these young men, and he will take you for his wife." And when she said she did not wish on any of them, she was sorely beaten, and at last consented, and was initiated according to the aforesaid ceremony. She said also that she was often transported by night with her aunt over vast distances, even from Strasbourg to Cologne.
That the evil Satanists wanting women to have a say.
Yep, that's terrible. That's unforgivable.
Yep. This is she who occasioned our inquiry in the first part into the question whether witches are truly and bodily transported by devils from place to place. And this was on account of the words of the canon. 6Q5 Episcopi, which seem to imply that they are only so carried in imagination, whereas they are at times actually and bodily transported.
For when she was asked whether it was only in imagination and fantastically that they so rode through an illusion of devils, she answered that they did so in both ways, according to the truth which we shall declare later of the matter, in which they are transferred from place to place. She said also that the greatest injuries were inflicted by midwives, because they were under an obligation to kill or offer to devils as many children as possible, and that she had been severely beaten by her aunt because she had opened a secret pot and found the heads of a great many children. And much more she told us, having first, as was proper, taken an oath to speak the truth. Huh. Is this one of them Magdalene laundry situations?
Yeah. And the account of the method of professing the devil's faith undoubtedly agrees with what has been written by that most eminent Dr. John Nieder, who even in our times has written very illuminatingly. And it may be especially remarked that he tells of the following, which he had from an inquisitor of the Diocese of Udao, who held many inquisitions on witches in that diocese and caused many to be burned. Yeah, that's really something to be proud of, buddy. Murder.
I don't think so. But he says that this inquisitor told him that in the Duchy of Luzon, certain witches had cooked and eaten their own children, and that the following was the method in which they became initiated into such practices. The witches met together, and by their arts summoned a devil in the form of a man, to whom the novice was compelled to swear to deny the Christian religion, never to adore the Eucharist, and to tread the cross underfoot whenever she could do so secretly.
Here is another example from the same source. There was lately a general report brought to the notice of Peter the Judge in Boltingen that 13 infants had been devoured in the state of Bern, and the public justice exacted full revengeance on the murderers. And when Peter asked one of the captive witches in what manner they ate the children, she replied,
"This is the manner of it. We set our snares chiefly for unbaptized children, and even for those that have been baptized, especially when they have not been protected by the sign of the cross and prayers."
Reader, notice that at the devil's command, they take the unbaptized chiefly in order that they may not be baptized.
"And with our spells we kill them in their cradles, or even when they are sleeping by their parents' side, in such a way that they are afterwards thought to have been overlain or have taken some other natural death. Then we secretly take them from their graves and cook them in a cauldron until the flesh comes away from the bones to make a soup which may be easily drunk. Of the more solid matter we make an unguent, which is a virtue to help us in our arts and pleasures and our transportations. And with the liquid we fill a flask or skin, whoever drinks from which, with the addition of a few other ceremonies, immediately acquires much knowledge and becomes a leader in our sect."
Huh.
I believe that.
Totally. Credulity is not a virtue. Here is another very clear and distinct example. A young man and his wife, both witches, were imprisoned and burned, and the man, shut up by himself apart from her in a separate tower, said, "If I could obtain pardon for my sins, I would willingly declare all that I know about witchcraft, for I see that I ought to die." And when he was told by the learned clerks who were there that he could obtain complete pardon if he truly repented, he joyfully resigned himself to death and laid bare the method by which he had first been infected with his heresy. "The following," he said, "is the manner in which I was seduced. It is first necessary that on a Sunday before the consecration of holy water, the novice should enter the church with the masters, and there, in their presence, deny Christ, his faith, baptism, and the whole church. And then he must pay homage to the little master, for so, and not otherwise, do they call the devil." Here it is to be noted that this method agrees with those that have been recounted, for it is immaterial whether the devil is himself present or not when homage is offered to him. For this he does in his cunning, perceiving the temperament of the novice, who might be frightened by his actual presence into retracting his vows. Whereas he would be more easily persuaded to consent by those who are known to him, and therefore they call him the little master when he is absent, that through seeming disparagement of his master the novice may feel less fear. And then he drinks from the skin, which had been mentioned, and immediately fills within himself a knowledge of all our arts and an understanding of our rites and ceremonies. And in this manner was I seduced. But I believe my wife to be so obstinate that she would rather go straight to the fire than confess the smallest part of the truth. But alas, we are both guilty. And as the young man said, so it happened in every respect. For the young man confessed and was seen to die in the greatest contrition, but his wife, though convicted by witnesses, would not confess any of the truth, either under torture or in death itself, but when the fire had been prepared by the jailer, cursed him in the most terrible words, and so was burned. And from these examples, their methods of initiation in solemn conclave is made clear. So.
So, doesn't seem like you gain anything by confessing?
Nope.
Or not confessing?
Nope.
You still get burned.
Yep. Doesn't matter. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And if you don't. Yep. The other private method is variously performed, for sometimes when men or women have been involved in some bodily or temporal affliction, the devil comes to them speaking to them in person, and at times speaking to them through the mouth of someone else. And he promises that if they will agree to his counsels, he will do for them whatever they wish. But he starts for small things, as was said in the first chapter, and leads gradually to the bigger things. We could mention many examples which have come to our knowledge in the Inquisition. What a show. But since this matter presents no difficulty, it can be briefly included with the previous matter.
Aha. So, the devil's a ventriloquist. Cool.
Yeah.
A few points are to be noticed in the explanation of their oath of homage. Now, there are certain points to be noted concerning the homage which the devil exacts, as namely, for what reason and in what different ways he does this. It is obvious that his principal motive is to offer the greater offense to the divine majesty by usurping to himself a creature dedicated to God, and thus more certainly to ensure his disciples' future damnation, which is his chief object. Nevertheless, it is often found by us that he has received such homage for a fixed term of years at the time of the profession of perfidy, and sometimes he exacts the profession only, postponing the homage to a later day.
All right. And let us declare that the profession consists in a total or partial abnegation of the faith, as has been said before. When the faith is entirely abjured, partial, when the original pact makes it incumbent on the which to observe certain ceremonies in opposition to the decrees of the church, such as fasting on Sundays, eating meat on Fridays. Oh, no!
Oh, the horror.
Concealing certain crimes at confession, or some such profane thing. But let us declare that homage consists in the surrender of body and soul.
And we can assign 4 reasons why the devil requires the practice of such things. For we showed in the first part of this treatise, when we examined whether devils could turn the minds of men to love or hatred, that they cannot enter the inner thoughts of the heart, since this belongs to God alone. But the devil can arrive at a knowledge of men's thoughts by conjecture, as will be shown later. Therefore, if that cunning enemy sees that a novice will be hard to persuade, he approaches her gently, extracting only small things that he may gradually lead her to greater things.
Secondly, it must be believed that there is some diversity among those who deny the faith, since some do so with their lips, but not in their heart, and some both with their lips and in their heart. Therefore, the devil, wishing to know whether their profession comes from the heart, as well from the lips, sets them a certain period, so that he may understand their minds from their works and behavior.
Thirdly, if after the lapse of a set time he finds that she is less willing to perform certain practices, and is bound to him only by word, but not in her heart, he presumes that the divine mercy has given her the guardianship of a good angel, which he knows to be of great power. Then he casts her off and tries to expose her to temporal afflictions, so that he gains some profit from her despair.
Ooh, what a nasty man. The truth of this is clear, for if it is asked why some witches will not confess the truth under even the greatest tortures, while others readily confess their crimes when they are questioned, and some of them, after they have confessed, try to kill themselves by hanging, the reason is as follows. It may truly be said that when it is not due to a divine impulse conveyed through a holy angel that a witch is made to confess the truth and abandon the spell of silence, then it is due to the devil whether she preserves silence or confesses her crimes. So yeah, God did it or Satan did it, we don't know.
But Satan can't do it with God's permission, so therefore it's
Jesus.
All the way down.
Yeah. The former is the case with those whom he knows to have denied the faith both with their lips and in their hearts, and also to have given them their homage. For he is sure of their constancy, but in the latter case he withdraws his protection, and since he knows that they are of no profit to him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
So, not a useful idiot. Got it.
Yeah.
We have often learned from the confessions of those whom we have caused to be burned that they have not been willing agents of witchcraft, and they have not said this in the hope of escaping damnation, for its truth is witnessed by the blows and stripes which they have received from devils when they have been unwilling to perform their orders, and we have often seen their swollen and livid faces. Similarly, after they have confessed their crimes under torture, they always try to hang themselves, and this we know for a fact, for after the confession of their crimes, guards are deputed to watch them all the time, and even then, when the guards have been negligent, they have been found hanged with their shoelaces or garments. For, as we have said, the devil causes this, lest they should obtain pardon through contrition or sacramental confessions, and those whose hearts he cannot seduce from finding grace with God, he tries to lead into despair through worldly loss and a horrible death. However, through the grace of God, as it is pious to believe, they can obtain forgiveness by true contrition and pure confession when they have not been willing participators in those foul and filthy practices.
This reminds me of something that I saw as a kid, and I can't remember the name of it or too many of the details.
Mm-hmm.
But it was this would have been like late 70s, early 80s. It was some guy in the 20th century is able to telepathically communicate with some girl in like the 1600s.
Okay.
You know, and they have, and like he might even be able to visit her in the past. I don't remember. But he, they have a relationship somehow. And because of the stuff he's telling her, the people in her time period think that she's a witch.
Obviously.
And so she's brought before a tribunal. And, he knows that this is happening. And so he digs through the historical records about the guy he's on the tribunal, and then finds out, of course, that they're all molesters.
Of course they are.
And so he feeds the chick that information. And so she starts dropping little hints that, oh, yeah, I know about this, and I know about that, and I know... And, of course, the guys hear that, oh, yeah, she's not a witch. Nope. Our bad. She's fine. And then something happens, and the connection breaks, and they're not able to communicate with one another again.
Aww.
But, yeah. All right. This is exemplified by certain events which took place hardly 3 years ago in the diocese of Strasbourg and Constance, and in the towns of Hagenau and Ratisbon. For in the first town, one hanged herself with a trifling and flimsy garment, and another, named Walpurgis, was notorious for her power of preserving silence, and used to teach other women how to achieve a like quality of silence by cooking their firstborn sons in an oven. Many such examples are to our hand, as they are also in the cases of others burned in the second town, some of which will be related.
And there's a fourth reason why the devil exacts a varying degree of homage, making it relatively small in some cases, because he is more skillful than astronomers in knowing the length of human life, and so can easily fix a term which he knows will be preceded by death, or can, in the matter already told, forestall natural death with some accident. So, yeah.
All this, in short, can be shown by the actions and behavior of witches. But first we can deduce the astuteness of the devil in such things. For according to St. Augustine in the De Natura Daemonis, 7 reasons are assigned why devils can conjure probable future events, though they cannot know them certainly. The first is that they have a natural subtlety in their understanding by which they arrive at their knowledge without the process of reasoning which is necessary for us. Secondly, by their long experience and by revelation of supernatural spirits, they know more than we do. For St. Isidore says that the doctors have often affirmed that devils derive their marvelous cunning from three sources: their natural subtlety, their long experience, and the revelation of supernatural spirits. The third reason is their rapidity of motion, by which they can, with miraculous speed, anticipate in the West things which are happening in the East. Fourthly, just as they are able, with God's permission, to cause disease and famines, so also they can predict them. Fifthly, they can more cunningly read the signs of death than a physician can by looking at the urine or feeling the pulse. For just as a physician sees signs in a sick man which a layman would not notice, so the devil sees what no man can naturally see. Sixthly, they can, by signs which proceed from a man's mind, conjecture more astutely than the wisest men what is or will be in that man's mind, for they know what impulses and therefore what actions will probably follow. Seventhly, they understand better than men the acts and writings of the prophets, and since on these much of the future depends, they can foretell from them much that will happen. Therefore, it is not wonderful that they can know the natural term of a man's life, though it is different in the case of the accidental term when a witch is burned. For this the devil ultimately causes when, as has been said, he finds a witch reluctant and fears for her conversion, whereas he protects even up to their natural death others whom he knows to be his willing agents.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yeah, so only the weak-willed ones are captured, and the devil doesn't have any interest in them anymore, so...
All right. Let us give examples of both these cases which are known to us. There was, in the Diocese of Basel, in a town called Oberweiler, situated on the Rhine, an honest parish priest who fondly held the opinion, or rather error, that there was no witchcraft in the world, but that it only existed in the imagination of men who attributed such things to witches, and God wished so to purge him of this error that he might even be made aware of the practice of devils in setting a term to the lives of witches. For as he was hastening to cross a bridge on some business that he had to do, he met a certain old woman in his hurry, and would not give way to her, but pressed on so that he thrust the old woman into the mud. She indignantly broke into a flood of abuse and said to him, "Father, you will not cross with impunity." And though he took small notice of those words, in the night when he wished to get out of his bed, he felt himself bewitched below the waist, so that he always had to be supported by the arms of other men when he wished to go to the church. And so he remained for 3 years under the care of his own mother. After that time, the old woman fell sick. The hag, whom he had always suspected of being the cause of his witchcraft, owing to the abusive words which she had threatened him, and as it happened that she sent to him to hear her confession. And though the priest angrily said, "Let her confess to the devil, her master," yet at the insistence of his mother, he went to the house supported by 2 servants and sat at the head of the bed where the witch lay. And the 2 servants listened outside the window, so eager were they to know whether she would confess that she had bewitched the priest. Now it happened that, though she made no mention in her confession of having been the cause of his malady, after the confession was finished, she said, "Father, do you know who bewitched you?" And when he gently answered that he did not, she added, "You suspect me, and with reason, for know that I brought it upon you for this reason," explaining, as we have already told. And when he begged to be liberated, she said, "Lo, the set time is come, and I must die, but I will so cause it that in a few days after my death you will be healed." And so it happened, for she died at the time fixed by the devil, and within 30 days the priest found himself completely healed in one night. The name of that priest is Father Haslin, and he lives yet in the Diocese of Strasbourg.
Well, I gotta say, he had it coming.
Yeah, certainly did. He earned that one.
Yeah. Similarly, in the Diocese of Basel, in the town called Buckel, near the town of Gelwil, this happened. A certain one was taken and finally burned, who for 6 years had had an incubus devil, even when she was lying in bed by the side of her husband. And this she did 3 times a week on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and on some of the other more holy nights. But the homage she had given to the devil was of such a sort that she was bound to dedicate herself, body and soul, to him forever after 7 years. But God provided mercifully, for she was taken in the 6th year and condemned to the fire, and having truly and completely confessed, is believed to have obtained pardon from God. For she went most willingly to her death, saying that she would gladly suffer an even more terrible death if only she could be set free and escape the power of the devil.
Wait a minute, who gave the devil his power? God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Telling you, man, he's a company man. He's just punching the clock, putting in time.
Yeah.
Oh my. Part 2, Question 1, Chapter 3. How they are transported from place to place. Broomsticks? Bed knobs. I'm not sure.
Ooh.
We'll find out after the break. And now we must consider their ceremonies and in what manner they proceed in their operations. First, in respect to their actions toward themselves and in their own persons. And among the chief operations are being bodily transported from place to place and to practice carnal connection with incubus devils, which we shall treat of separately, beginning with their bodily verification. Vectification. Yeah, it totally is. Okay, I gotta turn my head just so for these fucking glasses. But here it must be noted that this transvection offers a difficulty which has often been mentioned arising from one single authority, where, it is said, it cannot be admitted as true that certain wicked women, perverted by Satan and seduced by the illusions and phantasms of devils, do actually, as they believe and profess, ride in the night time on certain beasts with Diana, a goddess of the pagans, or with Herodias, and an innumerable multitude of women, and in the untimely silence of night pass over immense tracts of land, and have to obey her in all things as their mistress, etc. Wherefore, the priest of God ought to preach to the people that this is altogether false, and that such phantasms are sent not by God, but by an evil spirit to confuse the minds of the faithful. For Satan himself transforms himself into various shapes and forms, and by deluding in dreams the mind which he holds captive, leads it through devious ways, etc. I don't think these guys know how to use an etc. properly, but whatever.
Yeah. There is no definition I can find for vectification.
Huh.
There is, however, lots and lots of references to vectification.
Huh.
Like company names, vectification or vectify. And it does not appear to be like, an obsolete spelling of rectification. So that is just weird, man.
Transvection refers to a special class of genetic complementation of mutant alleles on homologous chromosomes. Prevailing view is that regulatory DNAs located on one homolog can regulate the transcription unit on the other homolog in trans. Interesting. Because I'm used to transfection, Transvection may refer to flying or genetics.
Yeah.
And apparently there's some fancy math.
Yeah. And there are those who, taking their example from Saint Germain and a certain other man who kept watch over his daughter to determine this matter, sometimes preach that this is an altogether impossible thing, and that it is indiscreet to ascribe to witches and their operations such levitations, as well as the injuries which happen to men, animals, and the fruits of the earth, since just as they are the victims of fantasy in their transvections, so also are they deluded in the matter of the harm they wreak on living creatures.
But this opinion was refuted as heretical in the first question, for it leaves out of account the divine permission with regard to the devil's power. There's that divine permission again, which extends to even greater things than this, and it is contrary to the meanings of sacred scripture and has caused intolerable damage to Holy Church, since now, for many years, thanks to this pestiferous doctrine, witches have remained unpunished because the secular courts have lost their power to punish them.
Hooray for secularism!
Woohoo! Therefore, the diligent reader will consider what was there set down for the stamping out of that opinion, and will for the present note how they are transported, and in what ways this is possible, of which some examples will be adduced.
And let's put a fork in it there.
Sure, we can do that. I got 30 minutes left on my recorder, but this is kind of... this has been actually better than some of the other shit we've read.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah.
Can only do
Still
so much
great.
of that. No. Never is.
Oh, and man, I don't know if you've seen this, but you guys are in a dire situation up there.
Are we now? Oh, yes. Well, there's all of that, of course.
Yeah.
Maple syrup reserve almost empty. We are actually kind of on the brink, right at the beginning of probably the worst drought we've seen in recorded history. So it's going to make the 30s look positively tropical. That's going to be awesome. And you would hardly know it because we got about a foot of snow over the last week. Here.
Yeah.
But not nearly enough. It's too little, too late, considering that snow is like 90% air.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be kind of fucked.
Yeah, it's like I can remember in the 80s,
Oh yeah, they were dry as fuck.
New York City, they had a big problem because their water comes from a reservoir like 100 or so miles upstate.
Yep.
And that area hadn't gotten any rain, but New York City itself was constantly getting rained on, so people were like, what the fuck are you talking about? We got it raining all the damn time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no. And I don't know if you've ever seen the water pipes they put in for New York City when they were doing it, but it was like in the early 1900s, and these things are like 5 stories high.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah, and there's 3 of them. They're buried underground, and you know, that's how New York City gets its water. And it's like it has more than met the demand for over a century.
Mm-hmm. Now that's planning ahead.
Yeah. Well, and you know something I didn't know, and you never hear mention of it. In big cities like New York, before electrification was a thing, people had high pressure water sent to their homes so that they could use it to power things.
Oh.
You know, it'd have little water, like, you know, a water mill type thing that would run stuff. You know, wouldn't generate electricity, but it would run like if they had like a mixer or something like that.
Oh.
Or a washing machine. They just turned this one water valve on. And
interesting. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah. And you only used that water valve for powering things because the water pressure was just like way too high. It was like hundreds of pounds.
Okay, interesting. Hey, you know what our provincial government's plan is for this coming drought?
Whole lot of nothing.
Well, there's that. Come on, it's really popular in your part of the world. Pray for rain.
Oh.
Like,
yeah, we've done that.
Yourself. Yeah. Tain't
Now,
gonna work.
About 15 years ago or so, when Rick Perry was governor of Texas, and they were in the middle of a bad drought, they had a big thing where they all got together in a football stadium, and they had this big prayer-a-thon. And it worked. The next day, or like a couple of days later, long enough that they would have had no idea that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
The state got just drenched with rain, and I mean, there was massive flooding.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that it was the prayer that did that, but whatever.
Nope.
You know, you do you, or whatever.
Yeah, I was reading a thing. There is a lake in California that in the early 1900s, they said, hey, let's drain this lake and turn it all into farmland.
Oh, brilliant.
So they did.
Yep.
Yeah. And because of all the rain they've gotten, the lake has come back.
Nice.
And, that's really fucked things up, and they've drained, they've redrained the lake, but all the experts are like, yeah, you can go ahead and do that, but it's just going to keep coming back.
Mom's gonna fix it all soon.
And you might as well just leave it because you're gonna need that water because global warming.
Yep. And that cursed El Nino.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw, but they realized, the temperature readings we've been taking for the ocean are wrong, and it's actually a lot warmer than we thought.
Yep. We're pretty much fucked. Once that Atlantic conveyor shuts down.
Yep, that's it.
Yep. That's going to be weird.
Yeah.
Europe isn't going to be quite so fucking pleasant anymore.
No.
You're going to get our winters.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're going to get the nasty shit. And then, of course, we're going to have all these refugees coming from everywhere. And it's like, if we did something about global warming and stopped fucking up other people's countries, this wouldn't be an issue. But
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. It's coming.
Yep.
Shit's going to get fucked up. Been warning about it since I was a kid.
Yeah, well, I know. I can remember the pessimistic projections of what would happen about this time are now the optimistic projections. For what could happen. It's like, great, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Pull the plug.
Let's fork it and get out of here because my fucking sinuses are acting up because COVID.
Lovely.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm guessing I'm going to have another month of this where my shit just starts oozing out of me and things like that because 7 weeks.
7 weeks?
Yeah. that's when it seems to clear up completely, unless you get long COVID.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Oh, hey, maybe that explains why my sinuses have been somewhat congested. My middle child sent me a text on my birthday. Dad, got a problem. She had been over the night before for cake. And yeah, she tested positive, and then my wife tested, and she was positive, and then I tested for a week and didn't have a positive result. But my sinuses have been more congested, and I feel a bit off.
Yeah, well, I mean...
But, yeah.
The first time I had it, it was kind of, there was like 2 days where I felt like absolute shit. And then, for like a week or so, my one sinus was just, one of my sinuses was just running constantly.
Yep.
Would alternate, and then it would clear up. But this last time, man, I was on my back for 2 days, and then I spent 2 weeks just constantly horking and coughing and sneezing, and it's now gotten better, but still after a while, my sinuses start building up with mucus and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, so. Well, I'm going to say it's probably best to avoid that shit if at all possible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Unfortunately, I live and work in a part of the world where Alex Jones is seen as a wise man.
Oh, God. Yeah, okay. Yeah. You're surrounded by idiots, too, huh?
Yep.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up, and I will get this audio file off to you shortly.
All right, man. I appreciate it. You have a good one.
Yep, no worries.
And we'll talk soon.
Hail Sagan.
Yeah.
That's it for this episode of the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes. It's also on Stitcher, and most of the episodes are on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter at tparkatheist, and it's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist. You can email me at trailerparkatheist@gmail.com. Show notes can be found at tparkatheist.blogspot.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to donate to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker.
The podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fosnuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.